The reading for the fourth Sunday in Lent, March 22nd, is from the Gospel of John, chapter 9, verses 1 through 41. As Jesus walked along, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" Jesus answered, "Neither this man nor his parents sinned. He was born blind so that God's work might be revealed in him. We must work the works of him who sent me while it is day. Night is coming, when no one can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world." When he had said this, he spat on the ground and made mud with the saliva and spread the mud on the man's eyes, saying to him, "Go and wash in the pool of Siloam," which means sent. Then he went and washed and came back able to see. The neighbors and those who had seen him before as a beggar began to ask, "Is not this the man who used to sit and beg?" Some were saying, "It is he." Others were saying, "No, but it is someone like him." He kept saying, "I am the man." But they kept asking him, "Then how were your eyes opened?" He answered, "The man called Jesus made mud, spread it on my eyes, and said to me, 'Go to Siloam and wash.' Then I went and washed and received my sight." They said to him, "Where is he?" He said, "I do not know." They brought to the Pharisees the man who had formerly been blind. Now, it was a Sabbath day when Jesus made the mud and opened his eyes. Then the Pharisees also began to ask him how he had received his sight. And he said to them, "He put mud on my eyes, then I washed, and now I see." Some of the Pharisees said, "This man is not from God, for he does not observe the Sabbath." But others said, "How can a man who is a sinner perform such signs?" And they were divided. So they said again to the blind man, "What do you say about him? It was your eyes he opened." He said, "He is a prophet." The Jews did not believe that he had been blind and had received his sight until they called the parents of the man who had received his sight and asked them, "Is this your son who you say was born blind? How then does he now see?" His parents answered, "We know that this is our son, and we know that he was born blind, but we do not know how it is that now he sees, nor do we know who opened his eyes. He is of age. Ask him. He will speak for himself." His parents said this because they were afraid of the Jews, for the Jews had already agreed that anyone who confessed Jesus to be the Messiah would be put out of the synagogue. Therefore his parents said, "He is of age. Ask him." So for the second time, they called the man who had been blind, and they said to him, "Give glory to God. We know that this man is a sinner." He answered, "I do not know whether he is a sinner. One thing I do know, that though I was blind, now I see." They said to him, "What did he do to you? How did he open your eyes?" He answered them, "I've told you already, and you would not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you also want to become his disciples?" Well, then they reviled him, saying, "You are his disciple, but we are disciples of Moses. We know that God has spoken to Moses, but as for this man, we do not know where he comes from." The man answered, "Here's an astonishing thing. You do not know where he comes from, and yet he opened my eyes. We know that God does not listen to sinners, but he does listen to one who worships him and obeys his will. Never, since the world began, has it been heard that anyone opened the eyes of a person born blind. If this man were not from God, he could do nothing." They answered him, "You were born entirely in sins, and are you trying to teach us?" And they drove him out. Jesus heard that they had driven him out. And when he found him, he said, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" He answered, "And who is he, sir? Tell me so that I may believe in him." Jesus said to him, "You have seen him, and the one speaking to you is he." And he said, "Lord, I believe." and he worshiped him. Jesus said, I came into this world for judgment, so that those who do not see may see, and those who do see may become blind. Some of the Pharisees near him heard this and said to him, Surely we are not blind, are we? Jesus said to them, If you were blind, you would not have sin. But now that you say, We see, your sin remains. The Gospel of the Lord. There is a lot going on in this text. It's a full chapter of the Gospel of John, and actually part of the narrative that belongs with this continues in the next chapter and isn't even part of our reading here. It sounds like a basic miracle story, and we love those stories because we know what it is to want a miracle. A lot of us have sought miracles of healing. Some of us feel like we have received miracles of healing, and others of us have wondered why we didn't. But this story isn't just a miracle about healing. It's not just a story about restoring sight to someone who is blind, but it is a story about belonging and identity, at who we are at core, how we relate to the world, what our place is, and who we are in relation to the world around us. This man has a place in the world. He is a son of his parents. He is a member of the synagogue. He is a blind person known by his community as someone who must beg for a living. His identity is wrapped up in those ways of relating to the world around him. And then everything changes. Now, in this story, it would seem that everything changing is a good thing. But even when it seems like it would be a positive, change is really hard. That's one thing that so many of us are struggling with today. The world around us has changed just almost overnight. And the ways that we relate to the world have been dramatically changed by the realities of this pandemic. Our identities and how we understand ourselves because of our place in the world have changed dramatically for many of us. Our employment may have changed. Our financial situation may have changed. Our connections to friends and family and communities have changed. Our ability to come together and worship as the gathered people of God has changed. And there is tremendous uncertainty and fear and loss around many of those changes. They're not just what's happening in the world around us, but those changes impact who we believe we are. And they make us question, what is my place in this world? And am I going to have a place going forward? These are the same questions that came to this man after Jesus healed him. The healing of blindness we think would be just an amazing gift, perhaps, for him to receive, but it wound up, this change, this miracle, wound up throwing him into a very uncertain place. You would think his parents would have his back, but they are more afraid of their own relationship with the community around them, and they don't support him the way one would hope your parents would always support you. His relationship with them is changed in that discovery. His relationship with the community around him has changed. People don't know who he is anymore. They don't recognize him. They don't know how to respond to him. And his relationship with the synagogue has changed. And that relationship was the center of life. It was everything. It was the most important communal identity that people had. And he is challenged by those in leadership who do not understand what this means either, who are also threatened by the change, and who ultimately end up rejecting him when all he can do is speak the simple truth of what happened. He spoke the truth of his experience, and in doing that, he was rejected and cast out because of the dare he took in saying that Jesus had healed him and therefore must be of God. Now you'll notice at this time that he still doesn't know who Jesus is. He knows that he's a prophet. He does not realize that he is the promised one yet, but he has lost everything. His parents have failed to stand up for him. His community doesn't recognize him, and the faith community throws him out. He is alone. A lot of us can relate to that feeling in these days. The future is uncertain. We are isolated in our homes. We are not sure what's going to happen next. We're not certain about who's going to have our backs. We're not even sure who of us will live in the next months and who will die. We are feeling very adrift. This is where the core point of this text comes into play. Because after this man has had everything that identifies his relationship in community in the world around him, in this world, after everything has been stripped away, Jesus comes and finds him. Jesus seeks him out. Jesus goes looking for him because he has heard all of the loss that this man has experienced. Jesus comes to find him, and he makes a place for him. The verses that follow this chapter are the verses that are very familiar and very comforting. How Jesus carries the sheep who hear his voice into his fold, and he is the gatekeeper and the gate that protects his flock. This story is about not just a physical healing, but it is about the God who comes to us when we are feeling cast adrift, when we are uncertain of our place or our identity, and he tells us that we have a place and that we are known to him. No matter what happens to us, no matter what things change in the swirling chaos of events around us, no matter what happens, Jesus comes to us. He seeks us out, and he knows who we are, and he guarantees us a place of safety and shelter in him. There is nothing that can take that from us. And that truth is the thing that gives us the courage we need to weather these uncertainties and storms with any shred of grace and mercy and hope. We carry that gift for one another because we know we can be confident that Jesus has a hold of us in all times, through all things, in life and in death, in change, in abandonment or fear or financial shift or job loss or whatever occurs to us. Jesus comes to us. He knows us. He claims us. He holds us forever. Thanks be to God.